looking at controlling resources. Okay, then just as an introduction, your contractor's site manager has probably one of the toughest jobs because you can think of what he needs to manage. He needs to manage procurement, the program, the people, maybe like a marriage counselor to some people. You have quite a diverse job description. On site, you have to manage your materials, progress, quality, etc., health and safety, and all that. Armed with a contract document, a program, and a health and safety plan, he has to manage the site. His goals are or is to manage time, budget, quality, and zero accidents. He also has to control project resources, and he has to consider labor, materials, plants, subcontractors, and preliminaries. Labor we're going to look at can either be directly employed or subcontractors. Materials, he has to control waste of it. For the rest, refer to your study notes. We will only focus on the waste management contained in chapter 8. So this is this little thing which I said which crept in. So please just ignore that. Yesterday when I updated the notes, I saw that this was in, so that's just something that crept in. Okay, so labor control, like I said, you can either have directly employed labor or you can have self-employed labor. In South Africa, it's not really self-employed labor. I think we've got a different term. We usually use labor-only contractors. Guys that specialize in labor, which has the necessary insurance, they have their medicals updated, UIF and all those items they look at, because you can imagine if you've got one or two projects and you suddenly have 100 people that you need to appoint, and then what do you do with them once the project is done? So that's where the labor only comes in. But your directly employed labor is usually the contractor, contractors like shop fitters and so on. They have specialized guys that do the work for them. For instance, now that tender briefing that we went to, like for instance, stylers, plasterers, many of the contractors will have that type of core staff on their list, the artisans, and bricklayers or so. And what they might do is they might get a couple of casuals or people for that specific project to assist those artisans, guys that carry the bricks up to them or so. And then it depends on the size of the contractor as well, and the location. For instance, if you're a contractor in Joburg and you get appointed here in Bloemfontein, you might appoint a bricklayer from Bloemfontein here just for the project, or a labor only contract for that. Or the other option is to bring that person from there, but then you need to organize lodging and so forth. Whereas if you appoint someone here, he already lives in the vicinity. So that's the type of considerations that you need to think of. Okay, and then large contractors may also have their own specialized workforce. A large project, your labor expenditure is crucial and involves actual man weeks. More on this later. The man weeks, we're not going to look in too much depth. That's usually a specialized method of managing your labor on site, and depending on where you're going to end up. But if you're going to get appointed by a large contractor, this is probably what you're going to manage as a construction manager quite a lot, is to manage your people and time. So please note that. Okay, then self-employed labor, we in the book as the UK do not use the term anymore and have moved to labor-based contractors, like I said earlier. Okay, so resource histograms. So this you did in PPM. So I'm not going to go into too much depth of how your labor histograms work. But what I may ask you guys to do for me, there's an example in this in this book that I might post a mini task for you guys to do. But don't worry, I won't do it now. I'll just check with you guys when you have a bit of time. When's your last tasks and tests due?
Môre is meneer se taak en dan volgende week Dinsdag skryf ons toets.
Nou, is julle klaar? Okay.
And then examens and literature review and the thesis.
Well, what we can do then next week, what we'll probably do, instead of having a formal class, what we'll do is we'll just do a tutorial on this topic, because I probably won't ask this in a test or so, but I want us to cover it at least. So what we'll do is a tutorial which will count as an informal assessment. Then we'll come to class and we'll work through an example. I think that this example, specific one. Yeah. So yeah, it's not really a test, it's more like a workshop. Okay. I think that's going to be the easiest way of doing this assessment. Okay. Okay, but histograms, do you guys know what a histogram is?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll show you guys now. You will probably recognize the next few slides. It is all about resource availability. A resource histogram is a nice visual presentation of the labor demand. The main objective is to show the peak demands. Okay, you can use multiple programs for this, computer programs, etc. And in the winter school, we're actually gonna I don't know if we're gonna get to resource management. I think we're only gonna get to resource allocation in Microsoft projects. Okay, when the critical items have been identified, remedial actions have to be taken, e.g. Appointing more people, getting more machinery, or just letting the project run for longer. So that type of options that you do have. Okay, so this one you'll probably recognize. This is from PKM from third year. I don't know if it looks familiar. It's a very simple yeah, histogram.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a simple project where you have excavations, bedding, lay pipes, manual excavations, manual construction, install valves, backfill, test and commissioning. So it's a very simple little project. But this is now your labor only histogram. Okay, so you have you need 2 laborers that in your teams that you can put on for trench excavation. So you've got 2 people that can work simultaneously at once in the trench. Your bedding, you can put in 4 people to work on that, and it takes them about 1 day. And then you've got your manual excavations. You need about this amount of people. Laying of pipes, you need 3 people to do that. And then you've got your manual construction where you need 6 people, and so forth. Okay, so and then you can see that all it does is this is done on an Excel spreadsheet, and then you just add up the amount of people that you need per day. So the total amount of labor for day 1 is 2. The reason for this being so low is because you've got a TLB as well, which is digging the trenches. So you don't need a lot of laborers. You can only really use 2 people to maybe clean away the excavation, and maybe 1 operator or so. So that's where the rationale comes in. And then for your bedding, that is now for putting it back into in the trenches. There you can actually use 4 people. You still need 1 TLB, but it goes quick. It's just a backfill, and then you've got compaction, so you need a Bomac, and you need your TLB. But there you've got 2 items going. You've got your bedding going, and you've got your manual excavations also running at the same time. So it's very simple. So you just you take your Gantt charts according to your planned amount of work, and then you just allocate resources to that in your Excel spreadsheet, and per day you add it up. So you can see on day 1 I need 2 laborers, day up to day 5 it is, yeah, you need 2 laborers each day, and then on day 6 you need 6 laborers, and so forth. And then you can see on day 11 and 12 you actually need 7 or 10 laborers. Okay, so but now okay, so on your labor histogram, you can see we've got these 2 extremities here, but we know we only have 8 laborers available. So there's already too many laborers on that day. So you can see you need to do a resource leveling there. Okay. Then with regard to the TLB, the same applies. You add it up, and you can see on which days you need what amount of machinery, and you can see on day 8 you actually need 2 TLBs, but you only have 1 available. Okay, so you can easily do a resource or identify where you don't have enough resources. Okay, and then the simple solution is without going into too much depth, is you just level out your resources and your TLBs, and what it causes your project to go. I think it's the pipe laying that just moves out one day, and together with your excavations, which moves the project to 1 day if you level it to 1, and if you level your your laborers to 8, like there. Okay, I just want to see why it's still adding that up. Okay, so yeah, so that's just a bit of a recap of how histograms work. And going further in materials control, that is on page 401. Okay, it depends on the size of the organization how materials are managed, whether you've got a buyer, central buying division, or if one person does everything. Good communications are needed between buyers and site personnel. That's very crucial. And then the responsibilities have to be clearly defined. Once on site, it's the responsibility of the construction manager to coordinate the communication. So that's something important to note. And then site layout planning is crucial. That's where you're going to put your plant, where you're going to store your materials. And I think it's one of my next slides. There's a couple of things that you can immediately, if your housekeeping on site is done well, if you come onto a site and you see but everything is nice and neat, you know they're managing their materials well. If you come onto site and you're falling over debris and bricks, broken bricks and so on, you know that they're not managing their materials very well. Okay, excessive waste left under scaffolding. Here's actually the items which you can see. This is just a few examples. What you can see is excessive waste under scaffold, face brick bulldozed underground, material being stored on uneven ground, pallets of bricks and unloaded or unprepared ground. This is supposed to be on. Okay, and then damage of materials while unpacking the packs, roof trusses stacked on unprepared surfaces, lack of covering of material, excessive material, out of sequence work, not preparing properly. So you can easily see when a site is not properly run, especially towards managing of materials. Okay, then something which embroids on that is waste. Historical material waste was only a percentage on top of your rates, but these days those percentages, if you're working on large projects, that percentage can be a lot of money in your pocket or a lot of money lost. So it is something that you need to manage very well. New thinking suggests seeing it as a resource. The industry can benefit environmentally on performance and the bottom line. Demolitions amount to about 100 million tons per year. That's now in the UK, so it's quite a lot. And then waste removal accounts for 4.5% of the company's profit. So just to put it into perspective, 4.5% is quite a lot. If you're working on a million rands worth of project, that's more or less 45,000 rand, which you could have saved or put into your pocket. So yeah, it's got a lot of money. Then approximately 13% of all material delivered to site is wasted. That's quite a staggering amount. And that's just the waste of material. There's other items which you can manage well as well. It's like your site offices. If you manage your tools and sheds and so on efficiently, the less containers you have on site, the less your overheads per day. So that's the stuff that you can think about. The other things is if you plan your site such that you use some of the original your constructed building to be used as storage, you can save that cost as well. So there's a whole lot of practical items that you can think of how to save money by utilizing your progress on site and just being effective. Okay, duty of care is the construction and demolition waste streams have been prioritized by the environmental agency. So it's basically once you've demolished something, you need to get it off site. You need to plan for it. That's the short and long of it. You can't just demolish something and not have a plan of how to clean your site. Waste streams should be managed safely and without risk to human health. Okay, and then the waste may consist of metals, asphalt, stars, concrete, brick, tiles, etc. Okay, and there's actually money to be made out of some of these demolitions. Sometimes you can sell your hard or some of your I can't remember what's it in English now, but some of your demolitions you can use for fill in other areas. If you've got a contractor that has a lot of fill to do and he can use that demolition work there, then you can actually sell it to them. So remember that, don't just pay money and go and dump it at the nearest site. You can actually say or make money from that. Like for instance, your tar waste you can reuse for other applications also. I know in Kuruman they use tar sections because of the asbestos there on some of the gravel roads. They just use some of the excess bitumen and they actually made a little layer on some of those areas to rehabilitate it, that the dust doesn't fly up. So that was one of the items that you can use that for instance. Okay, duty of care. Construction and demolition waste is normally classified as commercial or industrial waste. Hazardous waste, which requires consignment, is for instance your asbestos, chemicals, oils, contaminated soils, and so on. I've worked on one project where we had to take off asbestos. It's a schlep. There's only like 4 contractors in the country that does it, so it's a highly specialized work job, and they usually ask a lot of money for it. So as soon as if you're doing the pricing on a project and you see there's asbestos, or immediately start asking questions: is there enough money allowed for? Identify it as a risk whenever you pricing your documents also. Okay, then we have a legal duty of care. If we know that we're going to work with asbestos, the other risk is your laborers, exposing them to that. If It might not be that your personnel picks up a little strand of asbestos on that specific site, but 5 years down the line he gets asbestosis, and he said, oh, on this project I worked on that project, that's probably where I got it, even though it might be that he got it from somewhere else. So just see that in that light. So you've got a duty to care of care to actually look after your personnel's health. Okay, then the principal contractor should ensure that waste is properly cared for whilst on site. Waste is passed on to an authorized body. Waste transfer note to be made out when waste is handed over. All reasonable steps are taken to prevent unauthorized handling. Okay, site management plan. Okay, here's a nice example that you guys can use. It's description of the works, contractor identified, person in charge, type of waste that is produced, waste management action proposed. So pretty straightforward that you guys can have a look at. Okay, a waste hierarchy. So you guys can also just look at waste can either be reduced, reused, recycled, energy recovered, or disposal. Okay, so that's also a nice little question to ask on waste. And obviously you need to explain what each one is. Okay, here's another example of a waste data sheet that you guys can make a mental note for the industry if you do get onto the site and you, for some other reason now, you have to have an environmental management plan. Copy and paste this into that. Okay. Okay, then site waste management strategy. This is also nice to have, you guys. I'm not gonna go into this too much. You guys can read this. This is also important for the industry more than really for the subject. If I do change my mind and do include it somewhere, I'll let you guys know definitely on it. But for me at this stage, you can read through that. But it is a nice summation of the waste management section. So it's basically a summary of what we've done now. So, but there's a couple of stuff that you guys, yeah, it's not too important for me. Okay, then improving your management of waste. Managers have to be proactive in planning and managing materials, ordering, delivery, handling, and storage of it. Waste is caused by design waste, takeoff specification waste, delivery waste, site waste. Waste management should be integrated with everyday thinking. It will have a positive impact on the contractor's profit margin. Materials have to be managed properly. Incentives to managers have to be put into place, and then company materials management policies, etc. It will prevent health and safety problems as well. Okay, then we get to subcontractors. Okay, and this is now very important for me. You've got subcontractors, you've got pre-subcontractor planning, and then you've got during construction contract planning. So figure 18.8 is important. It shows the relationship between your planning and your actual control on site. So firstly, if you think back to our tender briefing next week or last week Friday, we've got those guys will have to obtain quotes now from their suppliers, so they're at this stage, and then they need to compile the shortlist, subcontractors register, subcontractor selection criteria, obtain quotations. If it's a large company, usually those guys have to be on their vendor lists. So if it's something specialized, then they've got a whole lot of red tape to actually get quotes from other guys and get them onto their registers and stuff.
So groot companies gebruik allemaal mees groot uit dieselfde mense.
Ja, but
Hulle weet daai mense is klaar geregistreer en
ja,
dan voldoen aan al die vereistes.
hulle gebruik meestal daai ouens. But I think it was in chapter 1 or chapter 2 that we spoke about a large company may have something like 5,000 vendors on their list. So that's it's quite a lot of vendors that they do have.
What's a vendor?
A vendor is like, for instance, Builders Market or Buco or suppliers of concrete, your materials basically. So yeah, so it depends on where they have worked before. Why they use the advantage of that is, and I think I spoke about that previously, is if they've got guys that they buy from a lot, then they usually get discount. So that's the major advantage of that. Yeah, because they buy in bulk, not for just this project, for multiple projects. Okay, then they may, so they get all their quotes, obtain quotes, then they make a decision on who they're going to use, and then they use that information and they put on their markup on that, and then they put that amount into their bill of quantities that they tender on. So they submit their tender, and then the tender evaluation is done, and then if they get awarded, it goes over to, they place the subcontractors' orders, and then they agree on a contract program, and then they commence with the project. Okay, so it's very similar, the same way as the main contractor the same motions that the main contractor goes through, the subcontractors go through. Yeah. So instead of submitting tenders, if it's a large tender, then though the main contractor will have tenders actually going out to their subcontractors, yeah. But if it's the smaller or the medium-sized contracts, they get quotes for certain things to do. Yeah, it's like a selective. It's the contractor selects their own contractor. Okay, then just the program, the input subcontractors during construction. We've got the contract stage, that's now finished. So then you've got monthly planning, weekly planning, and then you've got progress reporting. So you can see it's very similar to your normal, the same way as what the professional team sits with the main contractor sits with the subcontractors. Okay, so this is also very important, the information contained in here. You will see in your books there's a whole lot of checklists. Yes. Those checklists, just read through that. But the most important items is actually contained in these figures. So again, going back to my rule of thumb is know the headings, and then you can just build on to that. In Afrikaans is ken jy opskrifte gorrel die res. Yeah, so. But the main thing is, if you need to gorrel, you need to understand. Yeah. Okay, subcontractors continued. These days, subcontractors may be responsible for their own program, and they are. For instance, Amelia, where we worked on, the plumbing contractors had to submit their own program, and that had to slot in underneath the main contractor's program. Then it's a good idea to keep stock of the price, quality, and workmanship standards and incorporation of your time program performance of subcontractors. I know I've seen guys, if they've got like vendors and subcontractors, they actually have a scorecard on them, and then and a rating to them, so the guys can move up and down, and that's usually very confidential, that information what the guys use. It does in large companies that's very crucial information, because um, if you're working on large projects and you have to evaluate a lot of subcontractors, then the guys usually you look at um, their ratings for this guy in this area and so on. So it does become quite complex. Okay, and then just an example. This is, I think we've touched on this. This is not that important for me, but work package master program, package stage program, and then you've got a work package for over 6 week program. So it's just going into more detail. So it's not too important for me. Okay, then subcontractors liaison meetings. Okay, so you've got your program, monthly progress meetings, 2 weekly short-term planning meetings, 1 weekly meeting, and then your daily planning. So you can see your monthly site meetings to coincide with main contractor meetings with architect. Purpose to review progress, overview, variations, basically reporting to the management. Then your 2 weekly meetings, this is more on technical items, short-term planning, implementation on 1 or 2 week cycles. Okay, and then the purpose is to resources in the short-term period, review and monitor progress, liaison with other trades, progress reporting at weekly intervals, etc.
What's liaison in Afrikaans?
Correspondentie.
What does it mean? What's in
Liaison, yeah, it's basically working together. It's if you liaise with someone, you speak to them, you communicate, and you do stuff together. Okay, then the last one is the short-term program. Just another example of that. That's also not too important. We're going to do programming later on. Next semester, we're going to do programming in detail. So then we're going to cover all these areas. Okay. And that's it.